In this video, we're having a look at the Dreame X50 Ultra Robot Vacuum and Mop with Auto Emptying and Mop Self-Cleaning Station. Hi, I'm Lee, welcome to the channel. I hope you're having a lovely day. So this is a bit of kit. So this is, I'm pretty confident this is the top of the line robot mop vacuum cleaner from Dreame. It retails for $2,999.99. So let's just round it out to $3,000, shall we? But for that, you are getting a heck of a lot of kit. So let's get into some of the specs and stuff. So to begin with, it has 20,000 PA suction ability. So that's the strength of the sucking, and that is, it really does suck. It's a very powerful vacuum cleaner from that perspective. It has duo brushes, and what that is useful for is having the dual brushes mean they're spinning around and they're less likely to get tangled, because if a hair gets on one, it'll sort of try and untangle it through that. So it's got quite a lot of thought if you have pets or if there's lots of hairs on your floor, this is less likely to get tangled up. It's got a dual flex arm for corners. So what that means is it's got a little arm on the right hand side that kind of flicks out with a little brush, and so the little brush is normally just sort of trying to brush stuff underneath it to get the vacuum, but then the little brush comes out to get into corners. So that's a really nice feature. Now a lot of them have got that, so but I'm glad that it has it, because that's I think that's a really important feature. When I was looking at first for a robot vacuum cleaner moppy thing, it was really important for me to have one of those little things to go into corners, because like most houses, we have quite a lot of corners in our house, you know. Now the mops, so it does have two mops. Some really nice features about the mops is it also has a mop that can come out at an angle. So again, to get into corners or to get around different things, having that mop that comes out, I think, is very helpful and very useful. Another nice feature with the mops is that when you are mopping a carpet, well, it's not when you're mopping carpet, sorry, when you're vacuuming a carpet, the mops will actually raise themselves up, and so it's not getting your carpets wet. An extra feature that is nice with this model, and this is sort of typical of the more high-end models, is you can actually tell it to leave the mops behind when it does carpets. Because if you've got a carpet that's got particularly sort of long shags and long strands, even with the mops raised, they're still going to touch the carpet and get the carpet a little bit damp. So the fact that you can tell it to leave the mops behind so they can completely detach, it's a nice feature. You then have all the high-end stuff that you'd expect in terms of sensors and cameras, all those sorts of things. So when it scans, when it's looking for obstacles, it's not going to go over things that it shouldn't. It's not going to bump into things that it shouldn't. It's very, very good in terms of being able to detect all those things. A really nice feature, and this is a feature I've never seen in any other one of these units, is that the little sensor, like it's got like a little disc that sits on top that's raised up, that's where the sensors are coming out. But when it gets to a spot where if it has that sensor that it can't go underneath, and I have had this with some other robot vacuum cleaners, particularly around some of the furniture of my house. If it didn't have that sensor, it could go under the furniture, but because the sensor's there, it's blocking it. So what a lot of other ones do, which is kind of clever, is they sort of try and get the back end underneath it, so they clean a little bit underneath the furniture. But with this one, it's one of those things where it's like, is it necessary? But it is actually really useful. The little sensor thing will drop down, and then it makes it lower, and it can go under the furniture, which I shouldn't get this excited about it, but it's I can appreciate there's a fair bit of engineering, and then there's the UI that it needs to know when to do it, when not to do it, that goes into this. So again, this is one of the reasons why you're paying so much for these features, because you know it takes stuff to make this stuff. But that's a feature that is actually really useful, because it means that there's areas in my house underneath some of the furniture that would never get touched otherwise. So I like that feature. The other really headline feature, and this is they're spruiking this a lot, isn't really that useful for our house, because we don't have really any sort of big steps or anything like that in our house. But what this robot vacuum can do, now other ones, you know, they can raise themselves up a little. This one's actually got sort of two legs basically underneath it that raise itself up, and it can raise itself up and go over a step. I think it's at up to 6 centimeters. Now, in terms of how it actually works, is interesting, because it raises itself up, and then it's got these two sort of wheels with sort of not teeth, but like teeth. So it's not going to break things, but it gives it a more grip. So it'll sort of raise itself up and then use the teeth to kind of pull itself forward. Now, in terms of how well this performs, you can see here in this test video that it did, you know, it eventually did get over the step that I gave it to get over, but it did take a little bit of time to sort of come over from one side, come over from the other side. So I definitely found that in my test case, it struggled a bit to get there, but it did eventually get there. So it still definitely does work. And like I said, for our house, we won't really have any steps in our house where we need it to do that. But where it can do it, I mean, if you've got a house where it does need to go over like a little step to get from one level to another, it's just the engineering that's gone into it. I'm really, I was really keen to see how well it worked in practice. And yeah, no, it does what it says on the tin. A big feature of a lot of these robot mop vacuum cleaners is the dock and the automation that it has there, in terms of it'll automatically empty out the dust in the robot thing. It'll automatically clean the mops. It'll use up to I think the hot water that it uses to wash the mops is up to 80 degrees Celsius. So that's pretty scalding, but that means it's, very good at sort of making the mops cleaner. It then uses, hot air to dry the mops. Really cool feature that I haven't seen in any of the others, or at least I haven't read about it in the others. There may be some that have it, is that it's actually got 2 sets of UV lights. And so there's a UV light down at the bottom where the robot docks with it, but then there's a UV light also that goes into the bag that it empties itself into. And the idea behind that is this UV light is supposed to kill bacteria, around the back of the robot, and then inside the bag where you're keeping all the dust stuff that you're going to have to empty after a few weeks and so on. So again, that's another sort of value proposition. So why you're paying so much, because it does all this clever stuff and it's got all the stuff in. So the UV lights, I think that's pretty clever. Now, the dust bag is 3.2 litres. They say that you could go as much as 100 days before you have to empty it out. Of course, that'll depend on how big your house is, how dusty your house is, how dirty it can or can't get, and so on. But that's pretty impressive. And then you have 2 water tanks, one that you fill with clean water and one that's got empty. And then as the mop mops and has dirty water, it puts the dirty water in the dirty one, and it uses the clean water from the big one. This is one area where I've actually found, this is the one little sort of, not negative, but the one little thing that I've noticed about the X50 is that it seems to use a fair bit more water than the other robot vacuum cleaners, robot mops that I've tested in the past. I haven't sort of tested this outright, but it definitely feels like it's using the water a little bit more. I think it could also be because it seems every time that I've used the vacuum and the mop to mop the house, I've done it about 3 or 4 times. Every time I've done it, it tells me, hey, you may have to change the water. Hey, you may have to top up the water. And I go back and I check, and the water's not even half empty. So that might just be a little software glitch, but just something to be aware of. It does also have a little container where you can put cleaning solution in, and that's going to make the mopping just a little bit cleaner. So it's going to use a little bit of soap when it mops, basically, and I think that's a really nice feature. They obviously recommend that you should use only their cleaning solution. I do appreciate the fact that it did come with a little, I think it was about a little 200 ml bottle, so you don't have to go out and get that extra. I mean, you're paying this much. At the very least, they should get, they can give you a little sample. And that, I've put half in there and it's barely used half of it. So I think just one little 200 ml thing will probably last you a fair bit of time, depending on how much mopping you're doing. So that's a look at a lot of the features and functions and all that sort of stuff. But now let's get into the actual app and how the functionality of this works. And with a lot of these units, the app is really one of the things that makes the device sort of really shine. And the amount of settings and functions and stuff that you can do with the app is pretty amazing. So let's go ahead and go into the device. Adding the device to the app, really simple. You just flip up a little thing on the robot. There's a QR code. You scan that with the app and it adds it, really, really simple to synchronize the robot with your phone and with the app. And also it does give you voice feedback, which is, I think it's a nice, if it's going back to wash the mops, it'll go, going back to wash the mops. Or it's, now cleaning this, now cleaning that. So I don't know if you like that or you don't like that. I do like it. You get notifications, you can see the status on the app, but I do like how the robot itself says, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And it's, I don't know why I like that. It's nice to know what's going on, I suppose. The first time you run the system, it will go ahead and scan your whole house. Nice thing is that it's got, it's got the LiDAR stuff, it's got cameras, it's got all the sensors you could possibly think of. It's also got a little light, so if it's going through dark underneath some furniture, or even a room where you don't have the lights on, for example, our inner bathrooms, they've only got skylights, and so they can be a little bit dark during winter, the late afternoon, early morning. So it will turn the light on when it feels like it needs to and when it needs to check the cameras. So you can see here, this is the scan that it's made of my house. You can split it up into different rooms, and this is actually what it did automatically, and then you can go in and change that. So I can go in and say, right, well, I want you to only mop the kitchen, or I want you to only mop a particular area. In fact, you can see here, I've set this custom area just next to the dining. We had some guests over, and as one of the guests stood up, they went, "Oh no, look, I'm really sorry. We dropped some stuff from the plate or what have you." So after they left, I set this custom area to just clean that area. But if I go out of custom and go into the normal settings, you can see here you've got, in terms of the cleaning modes, you can do vacuum and mop only. You can do vac and mop, which is what I do. You can mop after vac. So first you tell it to vacuum, then you tell it to mop. In fact, I might even do that from time to time. You can do customized room cleaning. So you can go just clean this room, just clean that room. In terms of suction power, you can go quiet. By the way, it is so quiet. Like when it's not mopping or vacuum cleaning at all, like if the robot's just moving around, you cannot hear it. Like it is really quiet. In terms of when it is mopping and vacuum, you can hear it, but depending on, if you make it go, quiet, it'll do it pretty quietly. And then I prefer turbo because I don't mind if it's making a noise as long as it's cleaning the house, Then you can, with your wetness, you can have slightly dry, moist, wet, all this sort of stuff. So tons of things you can do to customize how it works. And this is just with the cleaning functions. Then you can go Clean Genius, and this will intelligent recommend cleaning parameters. So it will sort of automatically sort of work out what to do. And this is a nice feature. You can tell it to do deep cleaning. You can also tell it to go, to have sensors. So if it senses that a particular area is a little bit extra dirty, it'll go over it a few extra times. One thing that I've noticed with that, and this is not just with this unit, but I found it with a lot of brands and units, is if you've got sun coming out, and our floors, we've got these wooden floors, but they can be a bit reflective. And I found sometimes if it's got a little bit of sunlight reflected off the floor, it can think that that's an extra dirty spot, and it'll kind of go over it a few times extra. Not a big deal, but just something to be aware of. And again, I cleaned a bit extra. I'm not too fussed about that. In terms of where you're cleaning, you can tell it to clean a particular room, so you can pick which room to clean there. You can see the living room, the dining room, all that kind of stuff. And you can go all, you can go zone, switch that. You can tell it to go ahead and, so you tap on the clean and tell it to clean. It does also synchronize with your voice assistant. So if you're using Alexa, Siri, Android, what have you, you can tell it, hey, so-and-so, go clean the dining room or what have you. Or you can use its own, which is okay, Dreame, and then tell it what to do. So yeah, loads of functions in terms of what you can do. I do really like, I don't know how useful and how often it's going to be necessary, but I like the fact that you can log into the camera while it's doing stuff. And as soon as you log into the camera, it does, camera activated. So if anyone's around, you can't spy on people with this basically, because the voiceover will tell anyone who's around it, the camera is now active. And while the camera is active, it'll keep saying, like every sort of minute or two, camera is active. So I think that's very good that they're aware that people might be concerned about the privacy stuff. So that covers that element of it. But yeah, if I go more into the settings, so I just want to show you an idea. I'm not going to go through everything, but just in terms of the amount of settings that you've got here. So you can see clean history. You can see how many times you've cleaned and what you've done. You can schedule cleanup. You can have carpet settings. If we go into there, we can have mop raise, more settings, avoid, ignore, cross carpet, floor cleaning settings, collision avoidance. As you can see here, so many settings. A nice thing that I like with here, so you can go, UV sterilization. Oh, I don't have the UV turned on. I should turn that on. Now, why would I not have that turned on by default? Interesting. Anyway, so I've turned that now on. So good to know the UV stuff is not turned on by default. I didn't even notice that. Good. So you've got your voice assistants in there. It gives you an idea of how many different things you can tell it, what cleaning mode. Just, you've got so much control over what you can have it do or not do or what have you. Now let's have a look at how the unit actually performs when it needs to perform. So you can see here, this is a test that I did. This is sort of like the usual test that I do. I throw a little bit of water on the floor. I throw a little bit of flour on the floor, put some obstacles in the way. In terms of avoiding obstacles, it did an incredible job. Really nice features that it will actually show you in the app what those obstacles look like, what they don't look like, and you can actually tap on them and it'll show you a picture of what that obstacle was and if it's noticed anything. So the handiness of having the camera is that if you are at the office and you're not at home when you're running this, you can still log in and see what what's happening. Maybe your child's at home and you're running this thing and it's come back and gone, oh, the kids left their shoes all over the lounge. You can sort of call up the kid and go, hey, the mop dobbed you in, and go clean up your shoes so the mop can do its job properly. But yeah, so no, it did. As you'd expect for something at this level, it does a really, really good job of cleaning the house. It's not going to do, an ultimate clean. If you've got sort of like really, really dirty spots, you may have to go in and sort of scrub them. I mean, it's not a miracle worker, but for an overall just daily or every second day maintenance, I think it does a bang up job. One other thing to show you in the app, not so much because it's important, but it's just I really think it's cool. You can see a 360-degree view of your house the way that it's mapped it out. So have a look at that. That's pretty I'm not sure why that's important. It actually isn't, but I just think it's really cool. And you can see that it's done a pretty good job of noticing where furniture is and where walls are. And you can see that it auto-detected where the carpets are in the lounge. It's, yeah, that is the app. So what's my overall thoughts about the Dreame X50? Well, it's difficult to get past the price, I will admit that. But if you have a house of the size that needs this unit, something I didn't mention earlier is that it does have a pretty good battery in terms of size and capacity. So if you've got a big house, this is a really good one to look at in terms of, it can, again, your mileage may vary, but I think they said that it can do up to 220 minutes of vacuuming on a single battery charge, and it will automatically go back and charge when it needs to. So if you've got a really big area that you want to keep clean and you don't want to have to think about it that often, and that's really the big convenience of this, is that you set it up, you fill everything up, and then for a month or two, you don't really have to think about it. It just does its thing when it needs to. So if you are in the market for something like this and you do want all these features and functions, and this is kind of within your budget, the Dreame X50 is definitely a unit that I think is well worth looking at. It's got all the bells and whistles. If you don't need those, look at a different model. But if you do want all those bells and whistles, there's some very nice bells and whistles. So yeah, I hope this video was helpful. I hope it was useful. If you have found it helpful or useful, please like and subscribe to the channel. I cover lots of random tech, so if you're interested in lots of different types of tech stuff, this is hopefully a channel that you will enjoy. My perspective is a little bit different. I read up a little bit about the products, but I try not to read too much up about the products. So I will get things wrong from time to time, but I think that's because my style and what I'm trying to do is, if you were a typical sort of person who doesn't necessarily always read the manual, you open the box, you start pushing buttons, you want to see how it works. That's kind of the looks that I'm trying to do of tech. Anywho, I hope this is helpful. I hope it was useful. Please like and subscribe, as I've already said. If you've already subscribed to the channel, thank you so much for your support. I hope you're getting value out of it. And I'll catch you on the next one. Safe and happy mopping. See, you thought I was going to say safe and happy sucking, but I've made that mistake once before. I'm not gonna make that mistake again. No, don't go around it. Don't go around it. Don't go around. Don't go around. No, don't go around. You have to go over it. You can't go around.